Hi everyone and welcome back to the weekly installment of the Reserve List Top 10. These are the hottest selling cards on the reserve list from February 8th to the 15th of 2025. Now in today's video we are going to be taking a look at what players have been doing and we have a few buyouts to discuss, so stay tuned, let's get started. Welcome back everyone, I'm your host MTG Moxman here for the Reserve List Top 10. Now a reminder before we get today's video started that if you're shopping for any of these cards, don't forget to use my TCG Player affiliate link. It's found in the description of all of my videos. Thanks again for supporting the channel. Now let's dive in and take a look at the number 10 card this week, and we're jumping into Revised with Taiga. That's right guys, Taiga, one of the dual lands. This thing is back here. Now it has an average price of $369.97. It does take the number 10 spot with 52 sales this week, or $19,238.44 of total sales action. Now if you're wondering just how well a card like this is doing, all we have to do is take a closer look at where the card has been the last several weeks. Now if you look back in 2022, 2023, and 2024, this card was meandering down, but since then it has started to climb up in value. And of course, if we look at the history of the card, you can see it's had an all-time high of $499.99, and we're getting pretty close to that now. When we take a look at the actual card and the fact this is one of the entry points to power cards, well, dual lands kind of always make the list for players who are looking to buy copies of the real deal. This is the one to have. So let's go ahead and dive into the number 9 card this week, and it is Fork, again from Revised, and this is one of those cards everyone just gotta have 4 copies of. Actually, I recommend 5 just to keep one around. But this card takes the number 9 slot with 55 sales, or $1,982.75 of total sales action. It takes the number 9 spot, pretty respectable there, and the overall sales are increasing. Now, this card right now has had an average price of $36.05, but it's been as high as $150. Now, when we take a closer look at this card and you see where it's been, let's forget the fact that we're going to talk about a BGS copy here of 10, but still $324 is pretty high even for a BGS copy. Let's just say the highest has been around that $150 to $160 mark. Now, cards like this back in the day did have card titling words like interrupt in between the instant speeds, but in this case it just acts as an instant. Now it goes on the stack in order, and it's an amazing card to be able to copy spells for, so players want it. Now our number 8 card this week is Copy Artifact, again from Revised, diving in there because it's a really underpriced card. Now, it has an average price of $65. It takes the number 8 slot with 59 sales, which is $3,835. That's still a lot of action for a card like this in a single week, and it's been a few weeks in a row that this card has been on the top 10. This card is definitely on the move, and you can see here, when you look at the overall price being above the $175 mark, we're a far cry from where this card used to be, and starting out here in 2025, well, the interest is gaining on this card. The all-time high, it says here, is $265, but that was a PSA 10, I believe, at the time, at the height of the market. Right now, I think a good price for this card would be around the $100 mark if it was all in all being a great thing. But the fact we can get them for $65 still makes it a steal of a deal. An enchantment that can copy artifacts is an amazing thing to have around. One blue, one other, and this thing can just come into play. It's a really cheap card, guys. I do recommend buying one. Now we're diving in and we're taking a look at cards like Mind Over Matter from Exodus. A card like this has completely game-ending effects if you get it in the right deck with the right build. It takes the number 7 spot with 60 sales, and that's $2,519.40 of total sales action. Now, when we're taking a look at this card and recognize what it can do and where it's been and where it's going, this you can see is a little bit different than most cards we've seen recently in the top 10. This card has an average price of $41.99. It's been as high as $150, and it's just not where it used to be, although this card gets continuous gameplay. The all-time high, as you can see, was $138, and we're a long way off of that. So right now, it's 2/3 off. It's a great deal for an infinite combo card that can mess people up. This card has had continual spikes as new cards are created, and this is not one players are going to want to ignore. Buy a near mint copy. Now, when we're diving in and taking a look at all the cards in the top 10, where would we be if we didn't mention Sands of Time? The recent target of some buyouts, this card is still in the top 10, taking the number 6 position with 64 sales or $652.80 of total sales action into the market. Now, this card right now, though, as a speculative card, a lot of players are buying into it, but just how much gameplay it sees will really determine the long-term value of a card like this in Commander. The average price of $10.20 is already trending down. The all-time high being $15.50 means we're likely going to see this card slip in the next several weeks, all the way back down to around the $5 mark. Now, this card does have uses. You can find this thing being used in all kinds of game effects that make you skip untap phases, multiple ways of making sure your opponents don't untap stuff. It's still a fun card, and it's probably going to see some late-time use in the years to come. Now, our next card is Great Whale from Urza's Saga. With an average price of $17.50, this 7 casting cost 5/5 that untaps 7 lands, well, this is being used for infinite mana loops, and it had enough sales to take the number 5 position with 106 sales or $1,855 of total sales action. Really not a bad steal of a deal for an under $20 card. Now, when we take a closer look at this card, though, and where the prices are trending, this thing's been as high as $50. So right now, it's still below the half price range, which makes it a good target for players who want to own at least one for a Commander deck in the future. It's not overly expensive. When you look down at the all-time high, you can see here $49.99. Again, below half price. Go for a near mint copy if you're looking into buying it. The monthly change of $2.12 really is not that intimidating. And if you're looking for a way of using infinite mana at some point in your Commander career, you might as well get cards like this out of the way in case something hinky comes along and just messes up the market. Now, our next card, kind of interesting to see 3 Wishes still here on the list with an average price of $3.29. This instant costs 3, which is amazing. It's the number 4 slot this week. Now, the 131 sales is pretty high. It's only $430 though and 99 cents. It doesn't take a lot to manipulate the market on a lot of these cards, especially the low-end reserve list. Anybody can come in with $1,000 and do some serious damage for a week or two. Now, when we're looking at the card, though, let's not forget, this thing has been here. If you look at the market, that little trend of a tail going up is not likely going to continue. This thing has to see usage inside Commander to demand the price to go up. You have to have enough players buying into it. The all-time high being $19.99. Yeah, we're like 1/4 of where this price used to be. So this card is very affordable. There's no reason why you can't get it. And you do have some gameplay options with cards like this. Okay, being able to take a look at 3 cards, set them aside, being able to cast them, and then ditching them, not a bad idea. Now, our next card, Unfulfilled Desires from Mirage. This is a surprising stay, all right? This thing's still in the top 5. It's got the number 3 position this week. You can see here 172 sales. Now, that brings us up to still $4,281 of total sales action, and that's a lot of money, guys. There's a lot of people still buying this card, even as the price starts to trend down. Players aren't taking a chance on this one. They're just buying a copy to own into it. I can understand that myself. The average price right now at $24.89. It's not at the all-time high yet, but this was a good spike to remind players that cards like this do have usages, and the fact of discarding decks right now going on with Aether Drift, it makes sense in Commander that this is going to bite it. $55 being the all-time high, so we're still below that. We're below the halfway mark roughly. It's still a good bargain if you're looking for it. Again, aim for near mint, but better yet, if you have the patience, wait around just about 6-7 weeks, and you're going to see this thing still trend down. Again, not enough of a market right now to hold the value of this card. Now, let's go and take a look at the number 2 card this week. Now, this is Purgatory. It made the list last week from Mirage. It has an average price of $1.43. It's a 4 casting cost enchantment. It's really a pretty good card. I can see why players are buying into it. Number 2, 263 sales. It only costs $376. Honestly, I'm sure most of you guys can afford 4 of them for less than $7. Okay, this is not a big bite the bullet card, but it does have a few janky uses that you can put in there. The all-time high being only $13.99 means this thing is unlikely in the next 10 years to be some giant behemoth of a beast. It's not your Crater Hoof or anything, but it does have a little bit of gameplay you can use, especially with enchantments and things like Serra's Sanctum. You really shouldn't ignore cards like this. Now, when we're looking at the overall market depth of the card, you can see here, even with 276 sales, the market barely even winced. Okay, there's tons of copies out there. This thing is never going to go high, at least for the foreseeable future. You'd have to remove tens of thousands of copies. But whenever you play a summon spell and goes into your graveyard, you get to put it underneath Purgatory, and you can recast these things by wasting a little bit of life. Means it's a prime candidate for commander decks. Don't forget cards like this. Now let's go and take a look at the number one card. This is Misfortune from Alliances. It's 96 cents. It's a love buyout. A card like this, it has some fun in it. Don't get me wrong. 346 sales, $332 of total sales action. Takes the number one slot. But are people playing with it? Are we using it? Are we doing something? No, not really. Okay, the all-time high for a card like this is $4.42. You can see there, not a lot of movement in the market this week for a card like this. Even with that many sales, it saw a 16-cent increase in the market. And I'll tell you right now, no buy lists twitched at this one. Again, just like Purgatory, you'd have to remove thousands of copies. The fact it's only been $4 kind of tells you where it would be. Now, have I run into this card though? Yes, I have seen this card a few times inside various decks as kind of a love, kind of fun card, and an unexpected card, which sometimes players like to add in, just to add a little bit of spacey fun, you know? It's a 4 casting cost, okay? It's not the easiest card to cast, but when you look at it, target opponent chooses 1. You put a +1/+1 counter on each creature and gain 4 life, or you put a -1/-1 counter on each creature opponent controls and it deals 4 damage. Really not a bad overall effect. If you can find a way to have this thing recursion, copy it, there could be some fun with this. It still takes a lot to make it work, but at the same time, nobody said anything was easy. Have a little bit of fun with cards like this, why not? Anyone hoping for a Frankenstein effect on the reserve list is probably really disappointed right now. It didn't get brought back to life, although we are seeing continued strong sales in the reserve list in many areas of the market. They do tend to be low-end reserve list cards, but at least the interest is there. Even if it's just a pet project card, there are so many cards selling 100+ copies now that it's something to take note of, that the FOMO effect of seeing a video like this and seeing other people looking at that video and talking about it means other players may seek out individual cards they've always enjoyed or that they think can be speculated on to make money later on. Now, when we see cards like Unfulfilled Desire still holding well, and even older cards that spiked earlier this year like Forsaken Waste still around the $15 mark, a lot of these cards do have new low prices that are still a lot higher than they used to be. And that means some players are paying attention to this, seeking out cards they've always desired, wanted, or wanted to have a pet project speculation on, and they're diving into the market while it's pennies on the dollar. Does that mean we're going to see new spikes in the reserve list, new sales every week? It does look like we're going to see a lot of low-end cards for the next few weeks jumping into the market with a lot of sales. We also see mid-tier cards like cards of Copy Artifact, Fork, Brain Geyser. Even Brain Geyser, I think, had 41 sales this week. It was just below the reserve list to get into the top 10 this week. Not quite enough sales. We had a whole bunch of cards entering that market, but bigger cards, Mox Diamond, not nearly enough sales. Cards like, Force Field, Cyclopean Tomb, Candelabra of Tawnos, very rarely ever on the list, but once in a while it's been here. Even cards like Fastball, which a lot of players desire. Those cards aren't on the list right now. Players are speculating on certain cards, hoping these cards will get unbanned inside things like Commander. It hasn't happened yet, and if it does, that'll be a whole different thing for the reserve list. If the bracket system gets changed up to include banned cards, it'll be an entirely different world. It'll be the Wild West on the reserve list, and that's why a lot of players are speculating on it. It's something to keep in mind. Either way, thank you again for hanging out with me on my channel today. I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow with another video, hopefully, assuming everything works well. Those of you who've been around the channel for a while know exactly what I mean. And you know what? Shop smart, shop S-smart. Everyone have a wonderful day today. Hopefully I see you guys on my live stream, 6:30 Eastern Standard Time, every Sunday. Have a great one, everyone. Well, here we are back again, and I just want to say a special thank you to all my patrons out there, as well as all the YouTube membership members, because I wouldn't be able to fix the problem that just happened without your help. Yeah, it's still a big hole to dig ourselves out of, but at least it's not an impossible task. So thanks again to all my patrons. Thanks again for being there, guys. Because of you, we're going to keep doing this. It's awesome. Thanks again. This Ramble Jamble is brought to you by everything that can go wrong. First, let's talk about the reserve list. Some pretty strong sales. Remarkably so. There's enough players out there who have a big enough cash flow that if they want to, they can have pet projects like we're seeing on some of these cards. Just, I want to buy 500. I want to buy 1,000. It's only going to cost me $1,000 to get 1,000 copies, so why not? There may be 1 million copies out there, but now I own 1,000 of them. Now, the funny thing is, when you saw hundreds of cards move on the market for some of these cards bought this week, going up 16 cents, 25 cents, it just shows how many cards are available. Where other cards, you could buy 50, and you're going to see that market go up by $5. It just doesn't have the amount of supply, which means that demand goes in, and the price has to rise just because there's not as many readily available. Plus, many of these cards have been saturated over time, sucked out of the marketplace, and they're never coming back. They're in collections, which is one of the reasons why some of these prices go up so much and why new low-end reserve list cards can seldom make it that high because there's no need for it. Now, if a card comes along that breaks a card on the reserve list, that's when things change, right? That's when things get interesting. So we'll see how that plays out in the long run. Now, to the computer issue at hand. So I have the new laptop. I still was trying to get that mini PC going. But at the same time, I had to download software, and I didn't bring the mini PC because we're up north this weekend. So this all had to be done. All I can say is ramble jamble. And on to bigger and brighter days. You may have to dig yourself a hole to dig yourself out of a hole. But at the same time, it's okay. Sometimes life's going to throw you lemons. You better make lemonade the best way you can and just move on. Keep fighting. Don't give up. Even when it hurts a lot to pay for it. Guys, thanks again. We'll see you soon. Ramble Jamble.